My brother stood in front of 300 people at the Legacy Gala and announced, "All 6 buildings and that 9-figure trust are mine." Then he slammed Grandma's cracked watch on the table, splashed wine in my face, and laughed. "You're worth less than this junk." The whole room exploded with laughter, but I didn't flinch. I was furious. I just looked Dad dead in the eye and said, "You forgot something. They didn't know I own everything for years ago." And the next thing I did would turn their victory party into the most terrifying nightmare. Hit subscribe if you believe silence is the ultimate weapon. Drop a reckoning in the comments if you've ever craved that final moment of justice. The setting was the biggest ballroom at the 5-star hotel by the Hudson River. Our annual Legacy Gala. My brother, Brandon, got up like he owned the entire world, tapping his champagne glass, flashing the most smug, victorious smile I'd ever seen. Mom and Dad have decided to leave all 6 commercial properties and the hundreds of millions-dollar fund to me. Avery, tough luck, you get nothing. The whole room went wild, clapping, whistling. A few big partners even shouted, "He earned it." Chloe, his fiancée, grinned like she'd hit the jackpot. Mom dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief, and Dad nodded, clearly proud, and then the arrogance peaked. He snatched Grandma's cracked watch off my wrist, slammed it hard on the glass table, adding another hairline fracture. Then he splashed the rest of his champagne straight into my face, and sneered, "You're worth less than this piece of junk." I didn't clap. I didn't even blink. I just looked Dad dead in the eye, my voice steady. "You seem calm as usual, Dad, but you forgot something, didn't you?" The champagne glass in my father's hand froze mid-air. Brandon's smug grin vanished. Chloe stopped exactly 1 second before the glass touched her lips. All 300 people went stone-cold silent. The only sound was the AC humming softly. And in that single, shared moment, they all realized the script they'd rehearsed for months was about to be burned to the ground. Have you ever sat in a room full of laughter, knowing they were celebrating the day you got written out of your own family? Before I tell you exactly what my father forgot and how that night flipped the entire Vance family upside down, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I need to know I'm not the only person who's sat in a crowd of people claiming to love them, only to have them cheer as I was pushed off a cliff. If you've ever had to smile while your whole family cheered your total loss, hit that like button right now, because what happened next made every single person in that room wish they had never clapped. So, let me take you back to how it all started. I'm Avery Vance. If you saw my family before that night, you'd think we were the perfect Connecticut American dream klitsch. A mansion overlooking the river, a yacht docked out front, and always a picture-perfect Christmas on Instagram. But those pictures never captured the subtle hierarchy that ruled everything behind closed doors. Brandon's been the center of the universe since he was born. Everyone looked at him first, listened to him longest, and forgave him fastest. The college star quarterback, the son who stayed home and helped Grandma with the portfolio right after graduation. Every weekend barbecue ended with someone patting him on the back and proclaiming him the future of the Vance legacy. He breathed that praise like air. I learned quickly that I only existed in his shadow. Teachers mixed up our names until Brandon chuckled and corrected them. At birthdays, his cake was cut first, his gifts were opened biggest, and his stories were retold at the dinner table. Mine were folded up and kept inside. In middle school, I asked for a math tutor. Mom told me, "Money's tight, sweetie. Your brother needs new cleats." When I got a full scholarship to NYU Stern, Dad only said, "Well, guess someone's finally leaving Connecticut." So I left. A T-22. I packed my Acura with everything I owned and drove straight up the I-95. Until Connecticut was just a speck in my rearview mirror. Manhattan was the first time I could actually breathe without his shadow. I started working as a junior trust analyst in Midtown, analyzing trusts, commercial real estate. I learned how assets could be transferred quietly and permanently when you knew what you were doing. I still went home, but only when my grandmother, Lucille, called. She was the only person who never compared me to Brandon. She'd sit on the porch overlooking the Hudson, her gray hair pinned up with a pencil, listening to me talk about yield rates and amortization schedules like I was reading poetry. Some weekends, she'd hand me the key to one of the 6 buildings and say, "Go inside alone. Feel how heavy true ownership is, even if no one knows yet." Those visits were my oxygen. She never called me the smart one or the independent one just for show. She just looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You see right through things, Avery. That's worth more than money." When I left on Sunday nights, she'd always press an iced coffee into my hand and remind me, "It's only an 8-hour drive, not a lifetime." Everyone else just kinda forgot I existed. Mom's texts were just holiday reminders. Dad only called when Brandon needed help closing a deal. I became the kid who figured it out, which is just code for the kid who doesn't need our money anymore. I didn't hate Brandon. Hate takes energy, and I refused to give him mine. I just accepted the rules, like accepting New York in February. Put on an extra layer, move faster, and don't waste breath complaining. 2 years ago, I made senior trust and estate analyst. I bought a small penthouse in Chelsea, filled it with plants because nobody forgets to water them but me, and built a life where my worth wasn't measured by someone else's spotlight. The only tether left was Grandma Lucille. Every time I visited, she was frailer, her voice softer, but her eyes were just as sharp. She started asking more about trusts, about how to protect assets from people who love to loud and manage to loosely. And that's when things really changed. For years ago, on a Tuesday afternoon, Grandma Lucille called, her voice frail but clear. "Can you come home this weekend? I need your eyes on something." No explanation. When I drove onto the oak-lined road leading to her Greenwich estate, she was waiting on the porch with 2 folders and a pot of coffee so dark it could strip paint. She didn't waste time. She slid the first folder across the table. Bank statements. Cash flow from the 6 commercial properties. The investment fund. I gave her my honest take, because she was the only one who didn't use my knowledge to uplift someone else. Back then, I had no idea Lucille was planting something in my life, a ticking time bomb none of us, not even me, understood the destructive power of yet. She passed away quietly 13 months ago. I drove back for the funeral, standing in the back corner of the church while Brandon read the eulogy. Everyone cried. I felt her absence like a promise resting in my bones, a promise I was beginning to understand, but hadn't fully grasped yet. That night, after everyone left, I snuck into Grandma Lucille's old room. Underneath the chest of drawers, I found a small wooden box, tucked away. Inside, the cracked face watch sat next to a tiny USB drive. My heart was pounding. I plugged it into my laptop. There was only one audio file, Grandma's voice, frail but clear. "Avery, the secret is where they think it's safest." Right on the wound he inflicted on me. That sentence made me stare at the cracks on the watch face. "Find Attorney Miller." Suddenly, a shadow fell over the wall. Brandon was standing right behind me. He snatched the USB, "Hiding something, little sister?" He gave a nasty chuckle, plugging the USB into his phone. For a few seconds, he frowned, and my heart stopped. But then he burst out laughing. "Ha! Just the sound of a dying old lady rambling? I thought she left a treasure." He tossed the USB back at me, walking away with a triumphant smirk. I was frozen. It felt like he'd just snatched the last connection I had to Grandma Lucille. But he didn't know. That message and those cracks were the key. The next morning, a memorial was held at the mansion. Clearly feeling safe after the USB incident, Brandon was even more self-satisfied. He stood up in front of the relatives and partners. "Dear friends," he said, dramatically, "in memory of Grandma, I've decided to rename the Lucille Vance Trust to the Vance Success Fund. A new era needs a stronger name." Then he turned to me, pointing. "And you, Avery, still wearing that cheap watch Grandma left you? Just toss it. It's not worth a dime." He reached out like he was going to snatch the watch off my wrist. I pulled my hand back, my gaze ice cold. That small resistance triggered his fury. Instantly, Chloe stepped forward, accidentally spilling a glass of red wine right down the front of my white dress. The stain spread across the fabric like a wound. "Oops, I'm such a clumsy mess," she said, barely hiding her delight. I caught Brandon's eye, a cold, gleeful complicity. He didn't need to break things. His complicit silence was worse than the act itself. The room gasped, then quickly fell silent when they saw I didn't move. I stood there, soaked and humiliated, but I didn't wipe it off. I just looked straight at him and smiled a smile only Grandma Lucille would have understood. That's who I was when I walked back into the family mansion for the Legacy Celebration Gala. Calm, carrying 10 years of independence, and the unwavering belief of a woman who saw the future a long time ago. Numbers don't lie. Within 2 years, 7 figures had vanished into management fees, emergency maintenance, and operating costs. The receipts were missing or too blurry to read. The handwriting on the few remaining matched Brandon's perfectly. Grandma watched me flip through the pages, her lips pressed into a thin line. I gave him access because he swore he wanted to intern. Turns out, he was learning how to siphon, not how to build. I asked point blank. "Why not confront him?" She shook her head. "Because your parents would defend him. Boys will be boys," he promised to pay it back. By the time he had to, there was nothing left to pay with. That's when she opened the second folder. Inside was the entire mechanism of the Silent Trust, meticulously built over 5 years by a legal tech firm in Silicon Valley. It was an auto-activating trust. The assets had been transferred to my name for years ago, waiting for a single NFC signal to go public. And the key was the old watch. Brandon mocked. The cracked face was the Morse code. The NFC chip hidden inside. She explained it like a weather forecast. No probate needed. No public filings. Not a single family lawyer would see it before it was done. All it needed was one small action. At the perfect moment, Mr. Miller, her most trusted lawyer, would be available Monday morning to finalize the paperwork. No family lawyer would ever see the paperwork unless she wanted them to. I asked her, "Grandma, why me?" She looked out at the shimmering river, not hesitating. "Because you understand what these 6 buildings actually are. They're hundreds of families paying rent, just trying to keep their kids in the same school. You won't gamble their future on some crypto trades or the lavish parties your brother wants this month." I was about to say Brandon would lose his mind. She cut me off instantly. "He's not allowed to know until it's too late to change anything. That's the point of this entire thing." We spent the rest of the weekend going over every single detail. She walked me through every line of the silent trust mechanism. She made sure I understood. Once that NFC signal was triggered, everything was mine, like it or not. She had me initial every single page so no one could ever say I hadn't read it. The vow she made me take felt heavy, weighed down by a memory. 3 years prior, I'd found Brandon siphoning the funds. He shoved me. Grandma Lucille stepped in front of me and fell, hitting the corner of the table. The watch on her wrist slammed onto the floor, the glass cracking into a spiderweb right then. Her health went downhill after that fall. I carried the guilt that my fight had indirectly hurt her. For me, that silence was a promise to atone. Monday morning, Mr. Miller, her most trusted attorney, was there right at 9 sharp. We signed in the dining room, the ceiling fan ticking above us. Her hand never shook once. When the notary left, she poured 2 bourbons. Even though it was only 10 a.m., she toasted me and said, "It's done." Now, absolute silence. That's when she made me swear on my grandparents' grave not to breathe a word until someone tried to steal what was no longer theirs. I swore. That evening, we burned every single extra copy in the outdoor fireplace, watching the smoke drift up into the oak canopy. For the next 2.5 years, nothing changed on the surface. Brandon still flexed his portfolio on Instagram. Mom and Dad were still proud of their responsible son. I'd drive back a couple of times a year, check the financials when Grandma asked, and fix things that actually needed fixing instead of fabricating costs to bleed the funds. Nobody bothered checking the public records. Because nobody thought there was anything to check, her health worsened. She stayed in bed more, spent less time on the porch. But every time I returned, she asked the same question. Still our secret. I always answered. Still is. Those two words became our ritual. The last time I saw her alive, she squeezed my hand so hard her ring cut into my skin. Remember this, she whispered. Paperwork always beats promises, Avery. Every single time, she smiled like a person who had just won a bet the rest of the world knew nothing about. 7 months ago, right after the funeral, Mom called and asked me to stay an extra day. We need to talk about the assets. Her voice was gentle, like she was delivering bad news. The family will be here tomorrow. I knew immediately what this was. The whole family circling the estate before the will was officially announced. I almost declined, but something in Mom's tone sounded final, so I agreed. The next afternoon, our dining room looked like a shareholder meeting. Dad sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, a thick stack of papers in front of him. Brandon sat to his right, one foot resting on a chair, already acting like the new owner. Mom kept pouring coffee. No one drank. In the middle of the table was a fresh stack of documents, smelling of new ink. Dad slid the top sheet toward me. Just a simple waiver of inheritance, sweetie, he started. We want to keep everything in the family, but just to avoid any confusion later, we need you to sign off that you don't expect any part of the buildings. I glanced at the title. Waiver of Inheritance Interest Commercial Real Estate. All 6 addresses listed neatly below. My pulse was steady. I'd seen worse. Mom jumped in before I could speak. Honey, it's just a formality. Brandon is here managing everything day to day. This is just to keep things clean. Brandon smirked, spinning a ballpoint pen. Exactly, Avery. Nobody wants lawyers involved. Just sign it and we're done. I pushed the paper back an inch. I'm not signing it. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Dad raised an eyebrow. Mom froze with the coffee pot. Dad spoke first. Come on, don't make this difficult. We're not stealing from you. I looked him straight in the eye. I won't give up what Grandma intended for me. Silence. Brandon stopped spinning his pen. Mom pulled out the classic emotional warfare. Grandma just wanted the family taken care of. She wouldn't want us fighting. I didn't blink. She's not here to see anything anymore, is she? And I'm not fighting. I'm just not waiving my rights. Dad leaned forward, his voice low, like when I was 10 and stayed out late. Avery, we're choosing the easy way here. I almost laughed out loud. Easy for who? The person who's been bleeding these properties dry for years. Brandon jumped in, voice irritated. You live in New York. You don't need them. Why are you making this hard? Because they're not yours to give away, I shot back. Mom started tearing up the classic move, using a recent death to justify their moral failings. I stood up. I'm sorry you're upset, but I'm not giving up anything. Dad slammed his fist down. The coffee mugs jumped. This is ridiculous. You're acting like we're robbing you. I grabbed my car keys. No, I'm acting like someone who knows exactly what belongs to her. Brandon shot up, his face fire red. Typical. Always playing the victim. I stepped toward the door, stopping just long enough to land the final blow. Playing the victim is thinking you can erase someone's last wish for the sake of a convenient signature. Mom cried out, her voice broken. Avery, please don't leave like this. I didn't turn back. I'll see you all when you decide to respect what Grandma actually wanted. The glass door shut hard behind me. I heard Brandon mutter something about always having to be the martyr. Dad told him to shut up. Mom was genuinely sobbing. I got into my car, rolled down the window, letting the cold Connecticut May air rush into my face. The entire 8-hour drive back to Manhattan, they were convinced I was just having a fit. The family group chat blew up with messages about reconciliation and moving forward as a family. Dad left 2 voicemails, increasingly aggressive. Brandon texted one word: grow up. That very night, my parents showed up at my hotel room. Desperate, they revealed Brandon had forced them to sign a bail guarantee, putting the family house up as collateral for his massive crypto debt. Mom was hysterical. If you don't help your brother, we'll lose the house. It's all your father and I have left. Dad stared at the ground. I watched him age 20 years right there. In that moment of pure desperation, Eva, my middle brother, the silent one who avoided conflict, slipped a note into my hand when no one was looking. It just said, Miller knows everything. Don't trust Brandon. After all those years, Evan chose my side. This was my darkest point. I went back to my room, hugging the watch, completely crushed. The faint moonlight hit the watch face, and the cracks sparkled like tiny, distant stars. They reminded me of Grandma Lucille's determined face. Instead of letting the plan fail, I squeezed the watch, pulled myself back together. I used it as a symbol of her strength and wisdom to get back up. I ignored all the calls and texts. Instead, I printed the entire already activated silent trust documents, locked them in a fireproof safe, and waited. I knew they were busy painting me as the ungrateful daughter who couldn't let go of a grudge. They didn't know that grudge wasn't mine to let go of. The pressure mounted a week later when Brandon called. He'd figured out I talked to Attorney Miller. Sign the waiver, little sister, he hissed, or I'm freezing everything. And he did it. A temporary restraining order was sent to my bank, freezing all my personal accounts on some bogus claim about me sabotaging the family estate. I knew it was an empty threat, but it still took my breath away for a second. That pressure sparked the idea. I realized Brandon's arrogance was always the key that unlocked every single trap. I called him. My voice was tired, defeated. You win. I quit. But before I cut ties, I can help you legitimize the sale of those 6 buildings quickly, avoiding any SEC headaches. For 2% deal? Brandon, being choked out by his crypto creditors, said yes immediately. He sent an e-signature link. His lawyer added a warning. Review the asset management delegation clauses carefully, but Brandon yelled into the phone. She's terrified. Just sign it, it's done. The trap was sprung. He slammed his thumbprint onto the screen, a smug smirk twisting his lips. He muttered loud enough to hear. Finally, my overly smart little sister bows down. Grandma's collection, the buildings, the name. It all comes to me now. He sent the signed doc without even reading the final page, the confirmation and ratification of the Lucille Vance trust, meticulously hidden within the sales procedures. The plan was perfectly set. All that was left was the wait. The signal came 2 weeks ago. The invite was delivered to my Chelsea penthouse. Gold foil, thick cardstock. Lucille Van's Legacy Celebration Gala. Inside, Mom's neat handwriting. Please come home to honor Grandma's wishes and celebrate the family's future. Saturday at 3. We miss you, I knew instantly. This was the victory lap they thought they'd won. The family group chat blew up. Brandon posted a selfie outside one of the buildings. Big things coming for the Vance portfolio. Chloe added hearts. So proud of my man. I didn't reply. I just cleared my calendar and packed my hard-shell suitcase, the one I use for business travel. The afternoon before the gala, as I was packing in my old room, Chloe walked in without knocking. Looking for a shawl, she said, her eyes scanning the room, then stopping on my open suitcase where the watch lay next to a thick folder. My heart stopped. I slammed the suitcase shut. Didn't see it, I said, keeping my voice level. Chloe stared, her fake smile stuck on. Too bad. When the door closed, I leaned against it, shaking all over. One more second, and the game would have been over. I clutched the suitcase. My palms were white, tightening on the leather strap. My breath hitched in my throat. From inside the case, the watch gave a faint tremor, like a final breath. The scene of failure flashed clearly. Brandon's triumphant grin, my parents' hollow eyes staring at the for sale sign on the family house. My knees wanted to buckle. The feeling of defeat and raw fear froze in my muscles. I thought I was done. In that weakest moment, the faint moonlight streamed through the window, hitting the suitcase. I saw the shadow of the watch through the fabric. Suddenly, the smell of Grandma's old wood room rushed back sweet and warm, like she was holding me. I didn't need to see the cracks. Their image, sparkling like a small constellation, was etched in my mind, recalling Lucille's sharp eyes and determined smile. Paperwork always beats promises, Avery. Chloe's suspicious glance now felt like a final warning. This room wasn't safe anymore. I had to leave. Instead of despair, a strange calm washed over me. I gripped the handle and stood up. Now, the case didn't just hold documents. It held her wisdom and strength. The fight wasn't over. Inside the case were 3 clearly labeled folders, colored tabs, and a metal USB stick with high-res scans, the treasure I almost exposed. I loaded the car before Friday dawn and hit I-95 south for 8 hours, a drive I could now do with my eyes closed. The closer I got to Connecticut, the thicker the air felt, even through the windshield. Billboards gave way to oak trees, then familiar road signs. Every mile marker reminded me why I left and why I was returning. I stopped only once for gas outside Hartford. Scrolling my phone, 23 new messages in the family chat, all excited about Brandon officially taking over. Dad sent a private message. Hope this weekend puts things to rest. I left him on read.by the time I crossed the George Washington Bridge, the Hudson River sparkling in the afternoon sun. My gut had settled into the cold calculation I usually had before closing a multi-million-dollar deal. I wasn't anxious anymore. I was ready. I pulled up to the old estate right at noon on Saturday. Cars lined both sides of the street, cousins from Boston, uncles from Newport, property managers who'd been sending rent money to the wrong person for years. White tents covered the backyard. The catering team was hauling trays of crab cakes and lobster. A bartender was setting up under the old oak. This wasn't a meeting. It was a coronation. Mom saw me first and rushed out in her heels and pearls, arms wide like nothing had happened. You came. Everyone's been asking for you. She hugged me tight, drowning me in perfume. Dad followed, giving me that fake friendly handshake. Good to have the whole family back. His eyes started down to the suitcase I was still carrying. Brandon appeared on the porch, Chloe stuck to his side, both holding mimosas. He raised his glass in a mock salute. Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence. Chloe snickered, whispering something that made him laugh louder. The house smelled of lemon polish and ambition. A table in the foyer displayed photos of Brandon shaking hands with big partners. An enlarged tax map stood on an easel, the 6 buildings circled in red. Someone had even printed glossy brochures labeled Vance Family Properties, the New Era. I dragged the suitcase straight through the living room, setting it right by the sofa in clear view of everyone. Mom's smile froze for half a second. Dad cleared his throat. Brandon raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. The family lawyer, Mr. Lawson, was shaking hands, accepting congratulations as if the paperwork was already done. I stood nearby, counting faces. About 300 guests. Enough witnesses so no one could ever claim they didn't see what happened next. When the room was packed, Brandon finally stood. He held his champagne glass high, his voice booming as if he'd practiced for weeks. I just want to thank my parents for trusting me with Grandma Lucille's legacy. As of today, all 6 commercial properties officially belong to me. The Vance family tradition will only grow stronger. Glasses clinked. Someone shouted Brandon's name. A cousin started the applause, and the entire room erupted. The sound echoing off the walls, I waited until the applause peaked, then stepped out from the shadow of the chandelier, leaving the suitcase behind. Brandon spotted me and smirked. Did you finally come to congratulate me? I didn't answer. I just walked silently toward the signature table he'd been showing off all evening. Every eye was on me. The applause died mid-clapping. Instead of opening the suitcase, I quietly brought the watch close to the NFC scanner on the signature table, the same scanner Brandon had just used to sign his sale document. A sharp green light flashed. Instantly, every sound in the room, the background music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses cut out abruptly, yielding to a deafening silence broken only by Brandon's ragged gasp. In that static void, a large screen above the stage suddenly powered on. Large white letters appeared, slowly and powerfully, accompanied by a sharp metallic ding from the sound system after each announcement, like final nails being hammered into a coffin. First line: the silent trust activated for years ago. Ding. The entire room inhaled simultaneously. Next, right beneath it: sole beneficiary, Avery Vance. Ding. Then, a close-up shot of Brandon's e-signature appeared with the text: Brandon Vance confirmed and ratified. Ding. Immediately, the next line confirmed the transfer. All 6 properties plus assets transferred to Avery Vance. Ding. And finally, the line that made the air freeze completely: automated filing with SEC and IRS complete. Ding. The final ding finished, and one of Brandon's business partners gasped, horrified. Oh my God, he didn't just lose everything, he has the feds knocking. As if that was the cue, the doors of the ballroom burst open. 4 agents in black suits, SEC and IRS badges glinting, strode in with purpose. The lead agent held up a warrant. Brandon Vance, we have an immediate order for your temporary detention pending investigation into charges of tax fraud, money laundering, and securities violations. Brandon froze, his lips white, unable to utter a sound. The sharp click of handcuffs echoed in the dead silent room. He collapsed into a chair, his face chalk white, while the only sound was the leather shoes on the hardwood floor and the ragged breathing of the people who had just been cheering him. Right in that moment of chaos, Chloe's phone chimed. She opened an email, and all the color drained from her face. It was the secret prenuptial agreement established by Grandma Lucille, automatically sent when the silent trust activated, stating that if Brandon committed financial fraud, all his assets would revert to Avery. Chloe ripped off her engagement ring and slammed it onto the table. I am not marrying a bankrupt felon, then spun and walked away without hesitation. Brandon screamed, his voice hoarse. Fake. It's all fake. Enough, Brandon, a voice rang out from the corner. Evan, the silent middle brother, stepped forward. He looked at me with sympathy and resolve, then turned to Brandon. Grandma Lucille sent me a copy. I didn't want to choose sides, but you forced us all tonight. You signed your own judgment. Evan's presence as a living witness completely isolated Brandon, sealing his total collapse. Brandon lunged forward. Impossible. She was senile. Mr. Lawson didn't give him the document. I witnessed the remote activation process by Lucille Vance. The signature is a perfect match. The NFC code is valid. This is irrevocable. I finally spoke, my voice level and cold, loud enough for everyone in the silence to hear. 9 years you tried to erase me with promises and lies. Grandma only needed for years a pen and a trust to prove this truth. Paperwork always beats promises, Brandon. Every time, I leaned down and picked up the diamond ring Chloe had left behind. I walked to the pail, arrested Brandon, and slipped it into his vest pocket. Keep it, I whispered. It's all you have left. Then, I picked up the watch, gently wiping the champagne stain from the cracked glass, and clasped it onto my own wrist. The action spoke for itself. Dad started to stand, then dropped back into his seat. She never told us. That's right, I replied. She didn't tell you, Brandon, purple with rage. You hid this the whole time? You let me plan everything? I met his eyes. I let you plan for what you thought was yours. Grandma told me to wait for the day someone tried to steal what she'd long ago given away. Today was that day. Mr. Lawson closed the silent trust folder. The soft thud sounded like a coffin lid snapping shut. Legally, this matter is closed. The assets belong to Avery Vance. There is nothing left to discuss. The aunts and uncles shifted uneasily. The cousins avoided eye contact. Mom whispered, "How could you be so cruel to your own brother?" I looked her dead in the eye. I wasn't cruel. Grandma wasn't cruel. I am just the executor. Brandon slammed his champagne glass so hard the stem broke in half. Wine splattered everywhere, soaking the corner of the documents. I didn't flinch. "You think you won?" he snarled. "I didn't come here to win," I answered. "I came to ensure Grandma's final wish was respected." The whole room froze. No one wiped the wine. No one moved. The glass in Chloe's hand slipped through her fingers, shattering on the floor. Champagne sprayed onto everyone's ankles and heels. She didn't stoop to pick up the pieces. She just stared at me, then at Brandon, then at the papers, mouth agape. Without a word, she grabbed her purse, pushed past the cousins, and walked straight out the main door. The glass door slammed shut. No one followed. Brandon's face changed from red to purple. He lunged and snatched the silent trust folder from Mr. Lawson, flipping through it frantically. "Fake. It's all fake." She was high on painkillers. She didn't know what day it was. Mr. Lawson retrieved the documents, his voice robotic. Clause 4, Section 2. Upon the death of Lucille Vance, all assets listed in Appendix A are automatically transferred to the sole beneficiary, Avery Vance. Bypassing probate, he read on, each clause a hammer blow. When he reached the section confirming the date of record and the valid NFC code, Brandon's raving died down, replaced only by choked sobs. From the corner of the hallway, Evan, the middle brother who was always silent like a wall, stepped out. "She's telling the truth," he spoke for the first time all evening. The room whipped around. "I was there the day she signed. She asked me to drive her to the notary because she didn't want Mom and Dad to know. I waited in the car. She came out with a smile." Brandon spun around. "You knew and said nothing?" Evan looked straight at him. "She made me swear the same oath she made Avery. There are some promises more important than keeping the peace." Mom collapsed onto the sofa, covering her face, her shoulders shaking violently. Dad aged 10 years in 10 seconds. He sank onto the carpet, reaching out to me like I was his last lifeline. "Avery, please. We didn't know. We can fix this. We'll make everything right. Don't take everything from your brother." As he spoke, my father raised his hand to his own wristwatch, a gift Grandma Lucille had given him on his wedding day. He looked at his watch, then at the cracked watch on my wrist. He unclasped his watch, slammed it onto the champagne table, and uttered in pure, raw regret, "No, Lucille warned us." Right here on my wrist, Mom reached toward me, her mascara smudged. "We thought we were doing what was best for the family. You're already set up. Your brother is different." I pulled my hand back before she could touch me. This was Grandma's decision, not mine. Brandon lunged again, but Evan moved quickly, placing a hand on his chest. I said enough. Brandon froze, his fists clenched but useless against the block from the brother he always looked down on.
The aunts and uncles were statues. The catering team hovered, unsure whether to serve dessert or clean up the mess that wasn't champagne. Dad remained kneeling. "We'll sell the yacht. We'll mortgage the house again. Anything, just fix this." Mom sobbed louder. "We're so sorry. Please don't hate us." I looked at both of them, then at Brandon, trembling with fury, then at Evan, the only one standing with me. "I don't hate anyone," I said. "But I'm done fixing problems for people who never considered me part of the solution." I closed my suitcase, flicked the lock, and pulled the handle up. Mr. Lawson cleared his throat. "I will send official notification to all tenants and banks on Monday. The transfer was completed 4 years ago. This is now just an administrative formality." Brandon let out a wounded animal sound. Mom wailed into a cushion. Dad just stared at the floor. I picked up my car keys. 3 months later, the dust has settled, but nothing is the same. Brandon's name vanished from every lease, every bank account, every bill related to the 6 buildings. The penalties amounted to 7 figures for tax fraud and his crypto debt. He's paying it off in installments, living in a studio apartment, and selling cars at a dealership. Sometimes he slows down when he drives past one of the 6 buildings, then slams the gas pedal when he sees the new sign. Lucille Legacy Management, erected at the gate. My parents sold the mansion after 30 days to pay off Brandon's bail guarantee. They moved into a small condo in the suburbs with a parking lot view instead of the Hudson River. In their desperation, they messaged me, asking to rent an apartment at a discounted rate in one of the 6 buildings I inherited. I saw the message and never replied. Chloe returned the diamond ring by mail. No note. Evan still texts me every 2 weeks. He's the only one I answer. I returned to New York, living in my Chelsea penthouse. I founded and hired a professional asset management firm named Lucille Legacy Management to operate the inherited properties, proving I was a thoughtful and responsible owner, just as Grandma Lucille expected. Last quarter, I bought 2 more buildings, small ones, but mine from day one. I deleted every family contact, keeping only Evan's number. The final scene. I sit on my penthouse balcony, the lights of Manhattan spread out below. I open the back of the watch one last time. In the moonlight, the small, hand-engraved inscription from Grandma Lucille is clear. Love them. But choose yourself. I smile softly, close the cover, and look out at the city, a place where no one can hurt me anymore. My phone is silent, and for the first time in my life, that silence is the biggest victory. They celebrated the day they thought they erased me, unaware I had chosen myself 4 years earlier. The truth doesn't belong to the loudest voice, but to the most patient. If Avery's journey gives you the courage to stand up for what's right, subscribe now. This is where we share the power of honesty and self-sovereignty. The next story will prove justice comes in many forms, sometimes from a silent plan. In your opinion, what was Avery's hardest choice? Leaving her family for peace, or resolutely executing justice to the end?